What's going on, y'all? This is going to be another interesting one here. As I tell you, on this channel, we do all types of stuff, all types of gaming variety here. This one I like a lot, and I think there's a misunderstanding in some of the comments, but I get what they mean. But the Smash Brothers legendary director and creator, as you know, Sakurai, Masahiro Sakurai, says Japanese developers should avoid trying to appeal to Western tastes. Now, if you just read that, you're like, wait, what does he mean? We're going to go back and realize why that's a very important statement and what happened before any of this political stuff got into the gaming industry, obviously. But because he's talking about like going all the way back, and obviously he's making a statement on what he sees now too. So I can understand some people's comments, and I can understand also what he's saying back then. And we're talking about Capcom, Sega, and Square and Konami. I don't know if you guys remember in the 360 days, they all had a bit of a fall, right? They kind of lost their way a little bit because they were trying to appeal too much to the Western audience and they weren't staying organically Japanese, right? Now, if we go down here to the first comment, Luke Spencer right here says he's talking about the whole appeal to the West trend from the 2010s. And that's exactly the way I looked at it first initially. Not the woke garbage, femoids games, by the way, for example. And then you will come down here and see Emma Apple. The so-called Western taste isn't even real. It's a fictional audience cooked up by feminists and activists to push propaganda. Okay, so that's why I said now there's two different ways that people can look at this. One, that way, which obviously Japan needs to avoid, because once again, that's Western influence and Western politics. That is not Japanese video games. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with them. They would have never thought of that idea. It's foreign to their outside influence. So I know what they mean, but I think Sakurai is making two statements here. One, obviously, that could be the statement, but I think first and foremost, he means just in general, stick to making Japanese games because people love the Japanese culture and it's one of the most visited places in the world. It's not an accident. It's because of you being Japanese and sharing your Japanese love with the world. And people see that, which is so much different from the Western world over here, and that's what makes somebody want to go over there. Not because they want it to be like the West. No, it's because they are really enticed by what the Japanese love has been able to provide for the world. Looking at video games, anime, all that. You know what I mean? That's organically Japanese, right? And it's nowhere near identical to looking at a Western cartoon. Same thing with Western development and Japanese video game development. And obviously, it's pretty obvious, and I'll say it too from the beginning all the way to now. Japanese development is the best when it comes to video games, and it's not a competition when it comes to anime because that's just where it comes from. You know what I mean? So it's that sun element, 'cause, that's an animated light, rather than like the real fleshlight, like where you see like an actual actor. No, they're actually making those characters and giving them personalities, not people deciding to share their personality, which who they are inside by the way that the creator created them, or how they choose to make the decision and act. So that's the difference, right? Because when you're looking at Japan, you're like, man, I think of anime and I think of video games and why I like the culture. You know what I mean? And that's one of the key defining points in the Japanese culture. Is video games, program development, animation. So yeah, going down to some more comments. It's like he's not wrong. Many people buy Japanese games for exactly that reason because they're not like Western games, and that's what I mean. You have to be that. I think the Japanese are best with no diversity. It needs to be 100% Japanese. That's where they're the best. Same thing with the Chinese. Same thing with the South Koreans. It's Asian culture in general. Just let them be Asian. You know what I mean? And all the other stuff can be elsewhere. But we'll read some more of these comments. Let's read some of this real quick, and then we're going to talk about it so we can get more into the context of it. Sakurai argues that overseas players don't want Japanese studios to make Americanized games, of course, because they need to recover anyways. Too much garbage over here. Super Smash Brothers and Kirby creator Masahiro Sakurai says Japanese developers should focus on making games for the Japanese market instead of trying to appeal to Western players. Earlier this month, it was announced that Sakurai had been listed as one of the recipients of the Art Encouragement Prize for New Artists, given by the Japanese government's Agency for Culture Affairs. Rather than achieving the award for any of his video game works, Sakurai honor uh, is instead for his YouTube series on creating video games, which is great. This guy, man, he'll work like crazy. Why you think Smash Brothers is at like 35 million sales right now? I mean, just juggernaut, right? And he's so ambitious. They had to like put him on a needle in the hospital because he just wouldn't stop working. And Nintendo worries about him being over ambitious for his work. He works like crazy, and he creates like crazy. And they need to make sure that, hey man, we need you to make more games in the long run. Hold on, man, slow down here a little bit. So he's definitely one of the best in the business. Last week, as we saw, he collected an award and gave an interview to Japanese entertainment news website Intax, as spotted by Automaton, in which he felt that Japanese studios should focus on what domestic audience like rather than trying to make a game that may appeal to the West. According to Sakurai, Western players buy Japanese games with the expectation that they will provide something different from Western developed games, so there's no need for Japanese studios to adapt. Mm-hmm. It is not necessarily my own idea, but the trend in the games industry is that Japanese people should go for what Japanese people like, Sakura explained. A while ago, there was certainly a culture of making Americanized products because various works were popular in the US. However, I felt that Japanese game lovers overseas are not looking for such things, but for something unique and interesting from Japan. In other words, I think the ideal is to make the games the way you like them, and the people who can accept them will enjoy them. Exactly, because you're being organically true to yourself and organically liking it, and that is the best way of creation in general. Not forced narratives or any of that stuff. It never turns out well. We saw that. So I could see why, like I said, people can observe this in two dimensions: the political dimension, and just looking at what happened back then with Capcom, right? With Lost Planet, Resident Evil 6, just being too much of a shooter. It's like, no, you need to get back to the Japanese roots and make it more horror oriented, right? You know what I mean? And just them making like Western type games appeal, and then they kind of had a bit of a downfall. Same thing with Sega, same thing with Konami, and same thing with Square Enix. Remember the Western appeal they had, and they all had a downfall, and then they rose back up, and now you see them being more Japanese and not trying to cater to that. But then when they do that, you see the political appeal did come in and try to influence that, and it didn't do well. Forspoken for Square Enix was absolutely garbage. You know what I mean? And when they tried to make Final Fantasy kind of Western, it didn't turn out well. They got criticized big time for that, right? Same thing with Capcom. People hated Resident Evil 6 because it didn't feel Resident Evil. It just felt like a Western shooter with co-op on it. Lost Planet, I did like it, but it just didn't do well. Now, the Capcom you see now, yeah, they came a long way to come back to that state again in the past 6, 7, 8 years. And it's been phenomenal. Nintendo's always remained organically Japanese. They were never influenced by any of that trash. And yeah, they never fell. They had a mistake with the Wii U, but they fixed it real quick. They still had the 3DS selling, but first and foremost, they remained organically Japanese at all times. And look at the results. So Konami, it just, yeah, they took a dump. We know what happened, and they lost Kojima. Now, speaking of that, that's a perfect person to actually talk about it. He's always remained Japanese. He speaks Japanese for the most part, but you know he loves organically the Western audience. So what he does when he makes his Japanese games, he'll grab Westerners to continue his Japanese development, and that blend actually works well. You know, he has a different blend. He loves Western society. You know what I mean? He loves his his Westerners, right? His American world. It's like you could tell that big time, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And I like the way he syncs them together, and he does a good job with that. And I don't mind a Japanese making a Western theme, which I think that's done a lot, as long as it's in the Japanese organic spirit, and it does work. Capcom's done that very well. Our Square's done it all the time with like the blonde heroes and all that type of stuff, and you know all the superhero melts like Cloud, you know what I mean, and Sephiroth, but it's still Japanese at the end of the day, and that works very well. So I agree with him. You know what I mean? So like if I'm getting something from South Korea, I don't want it to be Japanese. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be. No, I want to see what the South Korean feeling feels like. You know what I mean? When I get something from China, I want to see what the Chinese feeling feels like. Like when I got Black Myth Wukong, obviously there's Japanese foundations in there because they have one of the best foundations. You know what I mean? You can see that being used. But to put that Japanese spirit in there, or the Chinese spirit in a Chinese game, it actually felt nice to see the Black Myth Wukong mythology, the lore, the Chinese instruments, you know, with the music and just the play style. And understanding that sometimes they can cross, and inspire each other, like Dragon Ball Z, one of the biggest animes of all time, probably the biggest. Came out of Japan, was inspired by Journey to the West, which came out of China, and the Monkey King, right? Wukong. So, in that sense, inspiration is good, right? Just not imitation and conformity, because then you're losing your organic process. So, yeah, this is, I think, a very interesting topic and a statement made by the legendary Sakurai himself. And I can't wait for the next Smash Brothers. And if you guys didn't have the Switch, I highly recommend you get Smash Brothers Ultimate. I mean, the game is, it's in the heavens by its own. Nothing is touching it. You know what I mean? I mean, look, let me show you something real quick. I mean, this guy's legendary. 35.88 million copies sold. Do you think any fighting games are going to do that? 93 meta, by the way. Was that a 94? All right, maybe it went back, but just take a look at this character roster too, guys. It's absolutely mental. You know what I mean? Everything that you want from every series is on here. It has over 100 fighters, by the way. Just think about that. It's insane. This game has everything. A whole entire like campaign universe. It's absolutely amazing. Every single fighter that you've imagined from all the greatest fighting game series has their own like RPG adventure world that you can go in there too. And you have like this trading card system. It's kind of like the Pokemon system where you're trying to capture everything from every universe, of every fighter series that you could ever imagine. Kind of like you know how they did with Mortal Kombat in a way, or the multiverse world and Injustice. Smash Brothers takes it to another level that you've never seen before. Like it's absolutely insane. Okay, when you look at this roster, like just a basic roster to launch, and then what they added over time, like how freaking insane it can get. It's just nuts. Like he was so worried. He's like, man, how am I going to top this with the next one? But I know they'll do something different though. But yeah, I mean, let me know what you guys think about this. This is a different video. Like I said, that's different from the other ones I've done. And when he said that, I just really thought about it. And yeah, that's what we want. Like just like over here in Western society, we want Western games to get strengthened and have their strong forefront again, like it was back then, so that we could have that balance between the East and the West evenly aligned. That would be so nice, wouldn't it? Let me know what you guys think about that. Because yeah, Japanese have been carrying hard for a while as far as like making video games, not microtransactions and all that, but video games. And that's one thing I do like about what Microsoft is doing on the Xbox forefront, and you know their American brand, they're doing American things, right? Call of Duty devs, you know what I mean? But that's the when you think about like all the games they're releasing, and they're teaming up with Japanese people, getting to get Japanese games in their ecosystem, which I think is smart because it's like, yeah, you need to do that. But in the 360 era, they had that strong Western forefront where like all the games they were launching were games to strengthen the Western portfolio because Western gaming is took a dump big time in the past like 10 years and it needs to recover big time. And that's one thing that I like that Microsoft is doing. If you look at everything they have gathered and acquired, it's all Western stuff because that's what needs to be strengthened, the American Western brand. So, yeah, as I said, let me know what y'all think. All right, y'all. Peace out. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed this. Some stuff to talk about. You know what I mean? Later, y'all.